Hi there, Karen. Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me.
Hi, Gavin. Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Fantastic. Hi. Well, it's 4 o'clock on the dot, so we can kick things off. So welcome everybody. We've got fantastic numbers for today's webinar, and as it says on the screen there, how do you build a plane while flying it? So I'm delighted that we're running this webinar today, APM in conjunction with LifeArc. So we've got Karen Skinner on the line here today, and Jo Faulkes from the Pharmaceutical Industry Project Management Group, otherwise known as PIPMG. So very excited about today's session. So Karen is going to be talking about how you would successfully evolve your company to align it to a new strategy without disrupting the organisation. So not an easy task, but Karen will be giving a view of her top 10 tactics, associated tools used by LifeArc's PMO to help successfully evolve or deliver transformation, I should say. So I won't give away all of her top 10 tips, but the framework and templates she'll be sharing will revolve around effective change management and communications. She'll be talking about gaining leadership alignment and stakeholder buy-in, as well as resource allocation and cross-functional collaboration, learning and development, and obviously much, much more. So really excited about today's session. Karen, if you could click to the next slide, please, that'd be brilliant. So I'm Gavin Spencer, I'm the Sector Development Manager at APM, and we've deliberately scheduled today's webinar slightly later than usual. Obviously it's in the afternoon if you're in the UK, but we've been doing quite a lot of work, as John and his team have, with colleagues over in the States. So we're deliberately running it later in the day here in the UK to pick up some overseas delegates. So shortly I'll hand over to John, who will say a few words about PIPMG. John will then hand over to Karen, who will deliver today's webinar. So as far as housekeeping goes, we want this to be an interactive session today, so there'll be 3 polls that we'll be running. You don't need the use of your phone or anything to dial into them, so fingers crossed the technology will hold up, and we'll keep them open for about a minute each, but very simple. But when they do open, if you can see if you can jump on and respond to them pretty quickly, that would obviously help us with that feedback. The chat box will be open, so if you have any questions, please use the chat window, and we will allocate about 15 minutes at the end of the session to pick these up. What else is there? Oh, the session will be recorded, so as long as there's no issues with the recording, we will circulate the link and upload it onto our YouTube channel, so you can obviously look back if you weren't able to catch all of it. Next slide, please, Karen. So for those of you who know who APM is, I know there's a lot of you on the call today looking at the delegate list, but I know there's always going to be some who don't. So just 3 slides that I'm going to gallop through just to say a bit about who APM is. So APM, we are the chartered body for the project profession, the only chartered body for the project profession in the world. We're a not-for-profit educational charity, and we were founded in 1972. Funny enough, we're originally called Internet, which someone obviously had some foresight there. In 2017 was a big year for APM. We received our Royal Charter from Her Majesty the Queen, and then last year we celebrated our 50th year. If you could click to the next slide, Karen, hopefully there's some details there about APM in numbers. So if you're into your stats, you can see there that APM has about 480 corporate partners. There's well over 40,000 individual members now, so the community is very big, and it's very much growing. And we recognise about over 22,000 qualifications and standards a year, so it's a major part of what we do. And then we run over 200 CPD events a year, much like this webinar, or breakfast events, lunch events, conferences, and then 3 major conferences, as it says there, which include our Women Project Management Conference and our annual awards, which was a couple of weeks ago, and lots of other things that are going on. My last slide, and I'll gallop through this one. If you could go to that one, please, Karen. The classic logo slide. So this just really highlights the organisation that APM works with and supports. So we really cover a wide cross-section of sectors, from government departments, there's defence and aerospace companies in there, construction infrastructure, academia, technology companies, you name it. We support pretty much every sector out there. And I personally work very closely with a lot of sectors, which include the healthcare, life science, pharmaceutical organisation, lots of NHS trusts. I do lots with the space sector and defence, which is fascinating, and then lots around insurance, financial and professional services. So if you're involved in any of those sectors and want to know more about our activity for the year ahead, do drop us a line afterwards. Next slide, please, Karen. That's it from me. So I'm not going to say too much more. I'll get involved in the questions at the end. But if I can hand over to our dear friend John from PIPMG, who's going to say a few words before handing over to Karen.
Yes, thank you very much, Gavin. So a little bit about the PIPMG. It is an association specialising in networking for project managers in life sciences, so pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, pharma services, and things like that. So we're not a chartered body. We don't offer qualifications or anything like that, but we provide a forum for that that sector. And many of you on the webinar, I guess, might have come in via that sector, and you're very welcome. Myself and a colleague in the States are the guys that manage the program of our own webinars and conferences throughout the year. And we do some by ourselves, and we do some in partnership, hence this one with the APM. So as it says on the slide there, we do conferences and webinars. We have our own specialist archive of life science related stuff on our website. And we also do project management development training, especially for life science people. Membership of PIPMG is free. You can see the link there. One other thing to mention is that it's essentially staffed by volunteers, and Karen is the epitomizes our volunteer spirit. She has an extremely busy and committed job in our sector, and volunteers for PIPMG. So we're delighted to get her to do this webinar for us. So if you're interested, I look forward to you joining. I, like Gavin, will be just signing off now and keeping a tab on the questions and the chat and things like that. But meanwhile, I'll hand over to Karen, and I'm looking forward to it as much as Gavin is.
Thank you very much, John. And so thanks to you, John, and our colleagues at PIPMG for inviting me to speak here today, and also Gavin and your colleagues and the team at APM. It's, I'm delighted to kind of deliver this webinar. So so thank you. So I can't see actually the chat, so if you could keep an eye on the chat when I'm presenting my full screen, I can't see anything else. So yes, so please do shout out Gavin and John if you think there's some kind of questions that I can tackle as we go along. So how to build a plane while flying it, that was the title of the webinar today, and you can see this picture of Tom Cruise here. I think, it sounds like a pretty crazy thing to do, doesn't it? To attempt to, it sounds a bit Mission Impossible, and we're not all Tom Cruise, or I'm certainly not. But certainly, what I kind of mean by this is about how do you successfully take on something new without completely disrupting what you're already doing? How do you evolve your organization to take on a new strategy without disrupting your whole organization? How do you inspire your employees to take on new opportunities, but still ensure that your business as usual activities don't fall over in the process? So as I say, it sounds a crazy thing to do, but actually I feel like a lot of us are doing this all the time. In many different industries, we rarely maintain the status quo. Often we have transformational change initiatives underway. So as John said, I'm a member of PIPMG, so my background is in the pharma and biotech industry. And certainly throughout my career, I've always worked in an organization where there's been a lot of merger and acquisition going on, where we'd have to integrate organizations while still delivering our existing pipeline. And I expect we've got project managers joining today from a variety of different industries, and I can see it happening in other areas as well, where there might be a technology advancement, and that results in a major change initiative as well. And perhaps even in our own personal lives, I feel like when I had my house extension done, we still lived in it while that was happening, and that's a difficult thing to take on. So what we're going to try and do is try and make this as an interactive as possible, And so actually we thought we'd start by doing a few polls, and for that I'm just going to hand over to Gavin now to see if he can do the first poll. Are you able to bring that up, Gavin? Let's see if the technology is on our side. Okay. Have you ever felt like you're building a plane while flying it? If you could utilize the voting options here. Gavin, is it obvious to people how they can do that?
Yes, I can see the votes coming in now, which is great.
Oh,
so
perfect. Everybody's already on it.
Yeah.
So no, I've not had to do it in my career. Yes, I've experienced it once. Absolutely. I've experienced this numerous times, and it's the norm. It's happening all the time.
Yes, we've got about 72, 73%. I think absolutely, but I've experienced this numerous times. Looks like the clear standout there with over 50% responding. So I'll just leave it for 10 more seconds. Yeah, I think it's kind of leveling itself out. Can you see the responses out of curiosity, Karen?
I can't see the responses. Are you able to go on and show those responses to the team now, or are we not in a position to? I can just see the questions still.
Let me just close the poll then. Got 79 voted, so let's see what happens when we close that poll. So what I can see, I'm not sure if you can see that, we had 79 people who voted. 10% said no, I've not had to do this yet. 16% yes, I've experienced this once. And then it came out as 50%, which was the highest of absolutely I've experienced this numerous times, and then 24% it's the norm, so I'm experiencing this all the time.
Okay, that's well, we couldn't see the results on the screen, but thank you very much, Gavin, for talking us through that. So it does sound as if, okay, so the majority of people have had to experience this a bit in their careers, which probably explains why quite a few people are on the call today, which is good. Okay, hopefully we'll be able to do a poll again a bit later on. Thank you very much for your interaction at that point. So as Gavin and John said, I'm going to talk through kind of what my top 10 tactics and tools have been that I've used in my career so far in order to support transformational change within the organizations I've been. And I'm just going to spend a bit of time going through each of them with you. Before I do that, actually, I thought it was useful to explain a little bit about the organization that I'm working in today, because I'm going to use that as a bit of a case study to explain some of the tools that I've used. So just to start with that, so I work at LifeArc. LifeArc's a self-funded, not-for-profit medical research charity, and we're driven to translate scientific ideas into medical breakthroughs for the people who need them the most. We act as a catalyst for healthcare innovation, and our vision is to make life science life-changing for people living with disease. And we've been very lucky, being incredibly successful, and played a part in getting a great many products into the clinic and 5 successful drugs on the market. And these therapies have transformed quality of life, and in many cases changed lives, saved lives of millions of people around the world. And these products have also brought LifeArc considerable financial returns, and that puts us in an amazing position now as a self-funded charity to invest that money back into medical research. So when it comes to transformational change, 2 big things happened that resulted in a decision to change our strategy. So the first one was in 2019, we sold some of our royalty rights to the cancer drug Keytruda, and we sold them for 1.3 billion. So overnight, that made us one of the UK's largest medical research charities by the resources that we have. And like, you don't often get an opportunity like that, do you? We recognise that. So that enabled us to just be ambitious on a completely different scale than we'd done previously. And so great ambitions coupled with now significant resources, that resulted in a major project to review our strategy to maximise our future impact for those living with disease. And then a second major thing happens, and it may happen to all of us, COVID. And so for us in the life science industry, that demonstrated to the whole world the value of integrated effort to rapidly bring products to the market. More than ever before, it was acknowledged that taking a multidisciplinary, multi-sector approach can really deliver breakthrough solutions to patients faster. Who would have thought we'd have got a vaccine on the market in the time that we did. And it shows it can be done if you focus. And so we made the decision to transform our strategy to focus our resources now on what we call translational challenges. And so these are ambitious, collaborative research programs that unite the collective strengths and resources of our organisation with other life science partners to solve urgent healthcare problems. I can see a typo on the slide here. It says transitional challenges. It's translational challenges because we work in the translation space. So we made a decision to really focus on a few key areas. So areas where there's high unmet patient need, area where there's promising life science solution that's right for translation, and areas where we can build multi-partner collaborations. And now we've got research programs away in areas like motor neuron disease, childhood cancer, and ultra-rare diseases as well. So let's come back to the 10 tactics and tools that we applied. So we've successfully realigned our organisation over, it's probably taken about 2.5 years to deliver these translational challenges. And our PMO used these tactics and tools to successfully deliver that transformation. Okay, so starting the first one, clearly defining the strategy. So you've got to make it clear where you're headed and why you're headed in that direction. So before embarking on any transformation, you really need to ensure that the new strategy is really well defined and understood. So that clarity will guide that transformation process and really help in making key decisions while you're flying. So you need to be clear on your purpose, so defining why you exist, your vision, like where you're going to go, the vision, the inspiration for where you want to go, the mission, defining exactly what it is you want to do and how you're going to get there, and then your values, how you're going to do it, and the behaviors that you need to be successful. So the tool that we applied in this area was this triangle, and essentially our future strategy needed to fit in this strategic triangle. So strategy has got 3 boundaries. At the bottom there, organizational focus and purpose, then resource and capabilities, and the environment and opportunities. So starting at the bottom with the organizational focus and purpose. So this is likely to be a combination of your vision and your mission, your values, and your appetite for risk as well. So the tighter the scope here, either real or perceived, the narrower the breadth of that, then the narrower the options for acceptable strategies. And this really forms the foundation for your strategy. It's difficult for any organization to behave strategically if it's not really clear about its own focus and purpose. So you kind of start there. Then with resource and capabilities, these are mostly internal forces, so combining an organization's competencies and means. So your resources, they could be tangible things like your buildings and your equipment, or it could be intangible stuff like your brand reputation, something like that. So understanding your resources then allows the organization to leverage them effectively and deliver the additional value and impact that you need. And then the third area, the environment opportunities or external possibilities, that closes the triangle. So when you think of your strategy, you need to think not just like what's happening in the external environment today, but what it's like to be in those few years in the future once you've delivered your strategy, and also thinking about how your competition is likely to react to what you're doing in your strategic area. So how might that external environment change by the time you get there? So at LifeArc, we really thought through this triangle. We know we want, in terms of what we want to do, we want to bring new life science solutions to underserved patient populations. In terms of the capabilities, we knew our strength was in translational science, so that's the area we're going to focus on. And then we knew that we wanted partners to work with us, and we had partners that were willing to work with us on our translational strategy. So that's why these translational challenges felt like a really good strategic fit for us. So hopefully that explains the first area. That was the first step, really defining, I suppose, why you want to build a new plane and why that makes sense. Okay, let's move on. So the second area, please do interrupt me, Gavin, if anybody's putting anything in the chat.
There's one that's come up, actually. I think probably rather than saving this one to the end, it's probably pertinent to maybe go through this one now. So Matt has asked, could you please define translation as opposed to, say, innovation?
Oh, okay, we'll do. And yeah, so with translation, I think what we mean in the life science sense is that you have great basic science research ideas that are fantastic science, but actually getting them to the patient, translating them into something that can be applied in the real world. if that makes sense. That's what I mean by translation. Where we focus is that gap between those scientific innovation and then turning it into a life science project that's actually going to have impact for patients and society. Good question, because I'm often trying to explain translation all the time. So thank you. I do appreciate this as an audience that's wider than life sciences. So thank you for that question. Okay, leadership alignment. So this is the second area. So ensuring that the leadership team, and actually all senior leaders for that matter, are really aligned with the plan to build the plane and fully support the translational efforts. That's absolutely critical. So leaders should be actively involved in driving the change, setting clear expectations, and modeling the desired behaviors as well. So the problem here is that often when you have a major change in strategy, there's sometimes areas that, or individuals that are considered to be kind of winners and losers in that. You know, certainly at LifeArc, in order to make way for the new strategic projects, we stop some projects. So I mean, how do you expect those leaders to feel? Clearly they're losing out. And so you've got to anticipate the fact that not everyone is going to be on board with your plan to build the new plane when you're flying it. So in this area then, you know, while the leadership team within the organization might have, I suppose, positional power or control of resources that equip them to kind of, I suppose, influence by instruction, we all know, don't we, that persuasiveness and indirect influence is a much better way to drive change, particularly when it comes to people. So as an effective people leader, we need to be able to view different situations from different people's perspectives and express that aspiration and rationale behind those ideas and that change. So as a leader, trying to determine when you use your kind of pull influence, so using more listening skills and questioning skills as the best route to influence somebody. However, we also need to know where we need to move over to the more push influencing side, which can range from just reframing somebody's perspective all the way to actually going ahead despite their objections. So to be able to influence others, I think you need to be able to kind of use this range of kind of push and pull. And also, people need to trust you. So actually, you can increase that by being reliable, which basically doing what you're saying you're going to do, and then being honest. So actually, we were going to try and do another poll at this point. Let's see how this works. Shall I hand back to you again, Gavin, and see if we can do a poll on push and pull leadership?
Okay, let's see if we can do that. What I'm going to try and do this time is see if I can share a clean. Okay, let's see if we can do it this way. Okay, we should be coming up now, so hopefully you can see this on your screen.
I can see the polls. So how well does your organisation balance influencing style? We're a bit too much push, we're a bit too much pull, we've got a good balance, we've not really thought about it. They're the kind of four options.
Now, can you see? It says. Can you see
yes,
on my screen?
I can't see. We're all we're excited to know.
Okay.
Can't see anything. Can still see the questions.
Okay, it's still collecting. We've got about 77 replied. So we've got oh, one of them's going down. So we've got 29% at the moment, as we tend to be too much push. 13% we tend to be too much pull. 24% we achieve a good balance across push and pull, and then with 34%, so the clear leader, 35% is the last one. We've not really considered our influencing styles. So yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm quite encouraged by that then, because I'd like to think then by sharing this today, more people will think about that going forward. So that was good to hear. But I would say certainly from our experience, we started out on the pull side because actually wanting to get the commitment of people, you know, really actively listening to people and bringing them on that journey. But I think, yeah, like the problem with that, with taking that pull side, you do get much better commitment that way. But often that can slow you up. Sometimes actually, if people aren't on message, ultimately you do need to use more push influencing in order to move at the pace that you need to. So So yeah, I think basically a mixture, I think, is the way that you need to approach this. Okay, let's move on to the third area, change management. How do you go from where you are today to where you aspire to be in the future? And the answer is, if you're a good project manager, is you implement a kind of structured change management process to guide the organization through that transformation. And so here, actually, this is mine. This is John Cotter, his model for the kind of 8 steps in terms of how change happens. So it's a well-known model, but actually I think it works really well. So it's almost like it's a change roadmap for that kind of takes you through that transformation journey. So the first 3 there are the beginning of the process. First one, you really do need to establish a sense of urgency, otherwise it's not going to get off the ground. Second, identifying change champions or change agents who can really help drive the transformation. You basically need to get some key people on side first. That's what that means. And then 3, create a vision. So really clarify how the future will be different from the past. You really need to show people where you're going, and also they need to see what's in it for them. Everybody knows that in order to kind of make that change. So that's the first 3. The next 3, 4, 5, 6, that's the kind of middle of the process. So communicating that vision and getting buy-in, empowering others to act. So any large scale change can only occur when large numbers of people really rally around that common opportunity. So getting other advocates involved. And then 6, plan and create short-term wins. So you really need to evaluate performance as you go along, and then recognize those wins, communicate those wins early and often to kind of track progress, and also to really energize your champions to kind of continue with what they're doing. So at this point, this is where most people that make the mistake of thinking they're done. You're kind of 95% done, but you're not totally done. And actually, often this is the point where the senior managers step away thinking it's done. And that's the fatal mistake. So you do need to go through steps 7 and 8. Oh, it's just gone suddenly dark in my room here. I need to move in order to lights to come on again. I've been sitting too still too long. Sorry. So 7. You need to be relentless, I would say, in initiating change after change until that vision is reality, and get your leaders to stay until you've been through that process. And then the last one, really embed. So you need to articulate the connections between the new approach and organizational success, so that actually they continue to be really strong and replace the old habits that the organization has. Evaluating systems and processes to ensure that those management practices reinforce the new behaviors and new mindsets and new ways of working that you've invested in. So I think if you do go through this structured kind of change roadmap, then you are going to make the change happen, and you're going to embed that change in the long term.
Karen, can you stop a second for some questions, because I think some of these are quite, it would be better to take them on now. One comes from James Maguire. So I think it relates to your previous slide. I don't think you need to go back to it, but also when it says form a powerful guiding coalition, that's I suppose, you know, getting all the leaders sort of involved and on side. He asked, any considerations for how to engage with leadership? In some organizations, project management has not got a consistent forum to present new initiatives or to engage with them. Have you got any thoughts about that?
Well, I've got strong thoughts about that, because I'm very fortunate that I'm in an organization. I mean, I'm the chief project and portfolio officer of this organization, and I sit on the executive team. And I've worked in organizations in the past when that hasn't been the case. So I think we're very fortunate here in actually recognizing the impact of project management and the value of project management and how important that is to the organization's success. And obviously I'm very vocal on our executive and speak up for the project management organization. I have worked in other organizations where that's not the same, and it is difficult to kind of have those voices be heard. So I think in those instances, you've got to find the most senior sponsor to speak up and reach out to. So find those people that can support you. I don't know if that's really answering the question, because in terms of leadership, in order for change to happen, it needs to trickle down through all levels of leadership. Often, as you know, the executive can be driving the change, but actually the executive are very far removed, I think, from a lot of, depending on how big your organization is, but there can be a long distance between the top and the bottom. So actually having very clear messages, that definition of strategy, the definition of what's happening in the change plan, and that communication going down throughout the organization. So you might communicate at a town hall and speak to the whole organization, but actually you can't talk to everybody in terms of what it means for me. People need to understand what it means for me. And you can only get that if you go through those various levels of leadership. So the next level down understands what it means for them, and then they can communicate what that means then to their direct reports and so on in the organization. That's the only when you get everybody aligned with the goal. That makes sense.
Could I just mention, there's another question. I think it's sort of been dealt with and sort of not, because you can't, you know, deal with everything, Karen, but how can this thinking about influencing styles be introduced, says Gauri Tambe. And I think something beyond, you know, you've got to be a bit lucky with your structure, is one option for you is write to PIPMG.
Yeah.
Just info@pipmg.org. You know, just send us a message. We've got people that can help with that in more depth, with a bit more time, that answer those questions for you. I'm just looking at the time and thinking.
That's good. Well, actually, and let's remind me, when I'm going to come on to talk about communicating with different stakeholders in a little bit. So maybe we'll come back to the push and pull there, because the other thing is you don't make it clear I'm using my pull influencing now, and I'm using my push. I suppose it's about adapting the language I think you need in order to the response you get. But let's come back to that. Let's come back to that piece. Okay, shall I move forward now and then shall I move on now? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. 4. Okay. Oh, actually, we're coming on to it now. Telecommunication. So often people say you can't communicate enough. Like, the more the better. And they also say, make sure you communicate a consistent message. Everyone should hear that same message, otherwise it'll get confused. You can't say one thing to this person and something else over here. And I suppose I'm questioning, actually, is that right? Because when I use the plane analogy again, every time we fly, don't we get the same safety demonstration. Quite understandably, it is a health and safety issue. And you know, they always say not all planes are the same. They might be different from last time. But we're all told the same thing, aren't we? Regardless of whether it's our first flight or whether like we're a regular commuter and we've been on this, you know, we're on the flight on the way out. So, and often a lot of us switch off to that, don't we? And actually, if you've seen a few airlines now, they're using animation or comedy sketches or celebrities in order to kind of maintain our attention, I think, when they're going through that safety demonstration. My point is that more communication and communicating the same message isn't always the most effective approach. Tailored communication is. And so I think when you think about that, again, this is Kelly's 5 followership styles, which kind of talks to you a little about explaining how you communicate appropriately for different audiences and your different stakeholder groups. So really understanding your organization, your audience, and evaluating on their basis of both their level of critical thinking and their preference for more active or passive engagement. So the critical thinking is where we're mindful of what's going on around us and what the team needs for their outcome to be achieved. It's not about us, it's about the organizational goal. And the active contribution on the y-axis there, on the x-axis, sorry, at the bottom, is where we don't sit back and wait for others to put their hands up. We get on and do it if we're the best people for the job. So on this kind of grid of 5 people, obviously the exemplary followers, they're highly engaged in delivering for the organization, but they'll think independently and critically. So they're capable of identifying flaws in your plan but raise those issues positively. So these people are super helpful. They're your stars. Then your alienated followers, these followers kind of think really well, but for some reason they're kind of sniping from the sidelines. Maybe they got stuck where they are, maybe that they're going to be negatively impacted by the change. They feel like they've lost their power, or they might have seen too much, so they become a bit bitter about things. They've been passed over for promotion. So these are your cynics, and you really need to watch out from them. So actually, to the comment was made earlier, you know, maybe you use those different push-pull styles depending on where these people are. The conformists down the bottom there, these exhibit deference to the leaders, but they take orders easily, but they show limited independent thought. So they're really actively engaged and they get the work done. So, you know, they're your yes people. And then passive followers, they prefer the leader to do the thinking. So they're your sheep. And the pragmatists in the middle, they occupy that middle ground. And they can flip actually between the different areas depending on the situation. So actually they're really useful as your kind of early warning system in terms of how your communications are going. So I would say kind of think about the different organisations and then tailor your communication appropriately to the different groups. You know, effective communication is really critical at those times of change. So really clearly articulating the strategy to all the stakeholders, explaining the reason for the change, explaining the outcomes, how it aligns with the organisation's goals, regularly communicating updates. And I think remember all the time, it's two-way communication. So we want to hear the concerns and we want to hear the ideas of the stakeholders as well who'll be impacted by the change. So at LifeArc, certainly when it came to our change, we really used the stars there as our advocates in terms of those change champions. And we kept an eye on our cynics as well and had really tailored communication to those cynics to stop, I suppose, to stop them getting worse and start bringing them over to the right. Hopefully that kind of answered a little bit the question that was raised earlier. Shall I move on to the fifth area? Any questions, comments? In the interest of time, I'm going to move on now.
Yes, please.
Shall I?
Yeah.
Okay, resource allocation. How do you prioritize and assign your limited, everybody's got limited resources in times of change? And here we went through a relatively, what I would call straightforward prioritization exercise. First, I would say you have to dedicate resources, that includes budget, time, and personnel, to support the transformation initiative. When it's a big transformation, it needs to be dedicated. You can't do something like what we've done on top of your day job. So you've got to determine the necessary resources needed to start to implement a new strategy. However, I would put this in the second priority category. So I would put that in that green category there. So although you want to do your strategy change, you want to do that transformation, you've got to maintain your reputation and your credibility with stakeholders throughout that change. So you need to do that with now neglecting your ongoing critical business operations. They're not going to wait for you to get your act together. You've got to meet your existing commitments. And so I would put that as the first priority in that kind of mauve colour there. You've got to make that first priority while you evolve to your new strategy. So in order to realise the necessary resource to do that, that might be shifting resources, hiring additional staff, or leveraging external expertise. For us, we made a call to terminate some projects where we didn't have external obligations to meet. So we had things in that yellow box down there at the bottom there. And then also we deprioritised some other projects into a third priority category in teal there as well. So that's how we approached it. And by doing that, we allocated resources effectively to balance the ongoing operations in the second and third category, in the first and third category, as well as doing our transformation initiatives, which were in the second priority category. And then we regularly reassessed our resource needs and adjusted as we went along. When we reallocated resources to new project areas, that required learning and development of our organisation, learning and development of our employees. We were training in new skills, training in new disease biology when we went into new translational challenges in new disease areas, and for some also training in management skills. So actually that brings me, Gavin, to the next poll. If I can, I've seen my screen has changed and I'm not sure how I can, oh, hang on, maybe it's here, I make you presenter again. That work
okay.
for you?
We can still see you. I'll bring up the next poll. There is a question, maybe while I'm just bringing that up.
Okay.
Patricia Mendoza's asked, can you give us an example of the first priority, please?
Yeah, with first priority, where we had previously made a commitment with an external party, because we were running life science projects where we had commitments with charities or other academics, you know, we've signed agreements that we were going to do this. So we're not going to go back on that. So I think for us, it was anything where we had got a legal agreement to do something, and to do something within a certain time frame at certain cost, we were going to deliver on that as a priority over anything that we wanted to do for ourselves for the future.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay, so my question here was, in general then, what percentage of your time within your organisation do your employees allocate to their own learning and development activities? And it's kind of less than 5%, so I suppose what's that, less than half day a week, all the way up to more than 20%, so more than a day a week assigned to that.
Yeah, this one is looking like it's going to be quite close. I will share the results in a moment with 64% voted. So if you haven't yet voted, if you can just cast your vote now, and then I'll close it and then share the results. So we're nearly there. It's going to be quite close. Okay, it's very close. Actually, it's just been overtaken. Right, it's 1 minute. So I'm going to close that, and then hopefully, if I share that now.
Oh, look, we can see the results now in the
There we
last
go.
poll,
I
Gavin.
figured it out on the last poll. So next time we'll be masters of this, or I will.
Next time. So actually, so it's coming out at the lower end. It's coming out at the lower end. And actually, I suppose it really depends, I suppose, at what stage you are within the organisation in terms of a change, and actually where you are within the organisation. So certainly with our more junior colleagues, they're spending more time on their learning and development. And obviously, if you've just gone through a big transformation and you need to upskill your workforce, then again, you might expect more time to be spent on that. So, I feel like with this, it can certainly depend if that's where you are in your journey and where the organisation is in their journey as well. Can I take back control?
Let me hide that poll then. Pass the baton back to Karen. And there we go.
Okay, am I back? Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we see your screen, yeah.
Okay, great. So although I think the percentage of time overall that you spend on learning and development can change, I would say at LifeArc, we do the same thing. We dedicate different proportions of our time. However, for the time that we do dedicate, everybody has a performance development plan here, no matter what stage you are. I've got my own performance development plan as well. And in those performance development plans, the time that we spend on learning development, we take this 70-20-10 kind of approach. And so I think by taking this approach, it kind of stops people from thinking like they did back at school in terms of everything about learning is more kind of like in the schoolroom, in the classroom kind of thing, and actually sees there's many other opportunities for their learning and development and their growth as well. So only 10% we do is from delivered kind of formal learning courses and getting accreditations and things like that. But then 20% comes from just working with other people, coaching, feedback, networking, that kind of thing. And then 70% happens actually giving people new experiences in their job, so through practice and on-the-job experience. So throughout our transformation, we identified any skills gaps and really invested in the training programs and workshops and coaching to upskill employees. We really helped them understand how their roles and responsibilities would change, and how the learning and development can help contribute to the organisation's success. Let me look at time. How are we doing for time? Have I got a rush now? So I've got 3. How many more to get through? A few more to get through. 7, cross-functional collaboration. So when you create a new strategy, you likely need to break up existing silos, but what you don't want to do is just create new silos, do you, within your organisation? So actually paying attention to cross-functional collaboration is key. So encourage cross-functional teams to work together, building relationships, sharing insights and expertise. This collaboration really helps ensure that the transformation aligns with the business objectives and minimises conflict, I would say, with the ongoing operations and the change initiatives. Second area, appreciating new ideas. So bringing together multiple perspectives and voices needed to engage in meaningful learning and reflecting and defining, and to minimise any groupthink that you might have. So allowing for those multiple voices and drivers, and then obviously sharing those learnings as well. Visible leadership support, we've already spoken about that, haven't we? About requiring leaders to really demonstrate their commitment to the change. And then shared goals. I mean, obviously that's really key, like creating a charter that really outlines the ideas, shared responsibilities, shared objectives, shared goals, and those deadlines, and then really keeping stakeholders informed. Eighth area, so taking an incremental approach and an iterative approach, so being flexible and adaptive. So consider implementing any transformation in incremental stages. It's very, very hard to do a sudden kind of full-scale change. So it allows for a much smoother transition and minimizes disruptions to ongoing operations, and it enables the organization to kind of adapt and adjust on the way. So breaking the transformation down into kind of manageable projects or chunks and evaluating them iteratively. I think taking different phases, different projects, each with its own specific objectives and timelines. This allows you to kind of focus on one aspect at a time, but ensuring progress overall. So I would say kind of we eliminated low priority projects at the start in order to just realize the bandwidth to take on new, and then we initiated new strategic projects. But then we made sure we completed those priority ones, those impactful legacy projects that like what weren't part of our future, but we weren't going to let down people that we'd made commitments to. We made sure we completed those to then realize the next level of bandwidth to continue to build that portfolio of strategic projects. So fostering a culture of flexibility and adaptability within the organization, really encouraging employees to embrace and change and provide feedbacks and suggestions for improvement. I think it's critical that the culture kind of reinforces and supports the notion of ambiguity. So everyone's got the permission to stop looking for the answers and start looking for the learning throughout the process that you go through. Ninth area, so I can't not talk about something mission possible and as risky as building a plane where you're flying it without talking about risk, could I? So I have included a comment on risk here, and I think all project managers are very familiar with risk. I suppose my comment here is we do have a tendency to focus on some areas of risk more than others. A lot of us gravitate to those operational risks, the people risk, the resourcing risk, that kind of thing. But I think when you're doing something like building a plane with flying it, I mean, that metaphor doesn't really capture the fact that all these people are looking at you like I suppose commenting on your plane before you finish building it, and you kind of think, well, hold on a minute, I'm still working on this. And oh, it's gone dark again. Sorry, I need to move. Come back. I don't know how I can set the timer to be longer. I just need to move more in my seat. So I think I won't go through all of these, but I would say probably the external emerging area. I think that's an area to think about. I think that's an area we don't pay much attention to in terms of like how our customers, how our suppliers, how our competitors might respond to our changes in strategy. So really understanding all those stakeholder groups and I suppose speaking to them and getting their feedback on that. Governance is another area that looks overlooked. I think when you evolve to a new strategy, thinking about the makeup of your board and actually whether the board that you've got today is actually the board that might be the best board for you in the future and where you've moved to a new strategy. So I think really taking a holistic view of your risk as you go through a transformation may unearth new challenges that weren't there before in your risk registers. So I would say pay special attention to that. Okay, number 10, last area. I put this last, but actually I think it's the most important one. And it's really actually to manage the risk of a transformational change. You really need to develop the right culture within the organization. You know, it's all about the people. And I would say in terms of your culture, it really does need to be bespoke to your organization to really resonate with all your employees and think, well, that's us and that's what's going to help us be successful. That's the organization we want to be. So it is really worth going through a process to analyze the culture and behavioral implications of the change and enable you to explore the mindset or beliefs and behaviors that you need to make that transformation to be successful. So involve your employees, you know, working groups, brainstorm the right behaviors and make sure they work for the whole organization. Identify themes from that, both positive and negative, really drill down and analyze why these behaviors are important. Consider how they can be taken then to kind of create a plan to drive change. So I would say we went through this exercise at LifeArc, and down at the bottom here, I've included our kind of 5 values, our 5 behaviours that we feel kind of work for us as an organisation and what we're trying to deliver. So, you know, we're driven by our purpose, we foster innovation, we're powered by collaboration, we act with commitment, and when we get it right, we achieve excellence. So kind of we feel like we went through a process to kind of build that with our organisation, and actually I detail what behaviours kind of anchor to those high level values. And so people really understand, I suppose, the behaviours that we value here and that we're going to drive us to be successful. So I think, is that my, yeah, that was my last slide. So those were the kind of my 10 top tactics and tools. You'll notice, actually, I didn't go through some of the obvious ones because there's some obvious things that project managers do in terms of, okay, having a project charter, really outlining what you do, having clear measures of success, objectives, KPIs, erasing metrics for who's going to do this and who's going to do that. I kind of felt like those were kind of tools that all project managers are already aware of, but hopefully I kind of shared some other things here that maybe you weren't all familiar or in the past that might be useful to you in the future. So with that said, I will stop there and stop sharing, and then we can have more questions.
Gavin, can I intercede, because I've picked up some questions here.
Yeah, go ahead, John. Thanks.
At my end. So one question about how, when you're communicating with various groups, if a new group is created whilst you're undertaking a project, how can you be sure you're getting the feedback you need when various stakeholder groups might be popping up and emerging over the 2 years of your project? That's the sort of sense of the question.
Feedback, but well, I'm trying to think here. I mean, we would certainly have channels within the different project teams in order to feedback issues and escalate that feedback. I would certainly encourage in all my project teams to have a very open and inclusive environment, so people felt that they could give that feedback. I would also say your informal networks, social networks within organisation are hugely valuable as well. So actually within our organisation, we have an employee forum, which is a more kind of anonymous way that you can, employees can feedback into that forum. Then from that forum, they can get insights into the senior leadership where things that that we think are landing or we think are clear and understood, but actually are being misinterpreted. So actually, I would say those are the 2 tools: using those informal networks, using an employee forum, but also making sure within the governance structure that you have, people feel comfortable in speaking up.
Excellent. Can I ask another one, which is your last slide shows something extremely important, obviously, which is defining the sort of behaviours that you want in the organisation, the values, and so on and so on. Many organisations do this and actually fail to have any mechanism for recognising when those good behaviours are being displayed and intervening when they're not. I wonder what LifeArc does about that.
Yeah, so we do. So as I said, everybody has a performance development plan. Everybody has objectives, set objectives, and also when we do our appraisals throughout the year, you have your set objectives and tangible deliverables, but you also have the how you deliver. And so we remark on our behaviours against those principles. And actually, we do take that very seriously in terms of if people aren't behaving according to those principles. Then I think that will be impacted in the recognition and rewards. So, for example, if actually when push comes to shove, we really needed somebody to focus on this area, and it was a big collaborative project, but actually they said, no, I'm sticking to my objectives because I know I need to deliver this for the year. I kind of think that's not showing a kind of good collaboration. And so I think it would be handled that way. So, and then also I would say when we see behaviors that really do exemplify our principles, we share that, because actually people learn from stories, people learn from the behaviors of others, and people learn from stories. So we've got an internal system, like an internal LinkedIn, where we're sharing all the time. And actually when you when you see people behaving in a certain way, collaborative, or then we share that and we link it to the values. So I think that reinforces that message, I would say.
I've got another couple. I've got a hot one for you in just a second, Karen, a hot one. And Gavin, you might like to mention this one. Someone says, referring to the 70%, 20% and so on, but actually because they're in the process of job seeking, many jobs place an emphasis on accreditations and specific role requirements. And there's a sense that certainly in life science, the accreditations tend to be in the 10%. They're not so important as other areas, but people may face these barriers. I wonder what the routes are. My advice would be try and seek, get some accreditation, possibly if you can, but I wonder what, Gavin, people should do about that. Should they contact APM, for instance?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously APM has a progressive suite of training to support everyone, from someone who's got no understanding of project management principles all the way through to someone wanting to go on and become a chartered project professional. So we can support individuals and organisations. So yeah, get in contact with APM. We can definitely help there. And
also, if you're interested in life science, you could write to PIPMG, and we want to get a bit better at doing that. Apologies for my landline is ringing, and I'll have to answer it and shut it off.
I'll leave you to get that phone call. Do you want me to ask Karen another question that's just come in?
No, I'll ask, and I think it's quite an important one, Karen, and it's, what advice do you have if you encounter resistance or hostility, even at a leadership level?
Well, I think the first thing is to try and put you in their shoes and work out why. So I'm all for like an open conversation. And I understand when these things happen, there are winners. I've been in this situation myself where I've kind of been in an organisation as a merger and acquisition, and I haven't worked out quite well out of it. And I think the best thing to do is kind of get that out on the table and have the conversation. So I think I always like assume goodwill, go from a starting point and put yourself in the other person's shoes and understand what their anxieties are, and then take it from there. Open and honesty is the best way always to approach these things. And people behave in different ways. I know the way that I behave. When I feel threatened, I go to data. I go and find evidence that backs up my case. That's my style. People analyze their styles, whereas other people might go into a fight mode kind of thing, or some other people go completely into their shell. So whereas I'm like, okay, I'm going to bring the data to explain why. So everybody's got a different approach, and I think then understanding where they're coming from and actually appreciating that people might handle things in different ways.
Great, Karen, thank you. Just to say, at PIPMG, we're very concerned with, especially for small organisations that are coming from being startups and changing from a group of very, very super brain, highly opinionated founders, let's say, who once the organisation starts to evolve and need more collaboration across the piece and systems and projects and things like that, might find they're a bit like fish out of water, and they're still wanting to run the whole business and arguing and stuff like that. So it's PIPMG is interested in that stuff and can help. So contact us if you want. Gavin, are you holding on to any questions at your end? Which
yeah, I've got one last one. Just a quick note to Karen. Is there any chance of resharing the slides, just in case people want some contact details from us?
Oh, yes. I hang on, here we are.
While you're doing that, I've just got a question. If Karen is able to have 3 wishes for her next building a plane in flight, what would they be?
3 wishes? Can you see my screen? Are you seeing the contact details?
You can see the contact details, brilliant.
My 3 wishes are to already have my ace team of people to help me, because always when I'm doing this, I tend to be starting and then we're trying to recruit somebody or that kind of change. So so I think that's my one main wish, is almost like having enough resource as you go into it rather than drowning. That's my one wish. I would say really trying to strive for as much clarity at the outset, because often when I've done this, the direction have changed a little bit en route. And as I said, you've always got to be flexible and adaptable. But often it changes so much, it feels like it's evolving the whole time, so you never get to your destination. I think a lot of us feel like that. You kind of never, it's constantly. So I strive for the day when actually that's a different picture. So those are two things. Can I think of a third thing?
Don't worry. They're two very strong ones.
Perhaps it's to get your next urgent event on time, Karen, which we're very grateful that you.
I would say also, like, just well, a bit of advice is reaching out to other people, you know, and I would say, you know, both PIPMG and APM, there's a lot of other project managers out there. So I would, one thing that I'm really supportive of is finding good mentors and good coaches. And, you know, there'll be other people that have done this before. So actually joining events and going to forums and saying, I'm having this challenge, you know, how have you handled it? I think really using your network is something. And so sometimes in the past, maybe, you know, when I was like earlier on in my career, it's almost like if I'd have known now what I knew then what I know now, maybe I would have handled things much better. So I think reaching out to people that have kind of been through it.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, I'm very conscious of time. If anyone wants to get in contact with either myself, John, or Karen, our contact details are on the screen. I just want to say a huge thank you to both John and Karen. I think it's been a really, really interesting session. A couple of people have asked if the recording will be available. Yes, it will. As soon as I end this, it will download, and I'll get it uploaded to YouTube, and I'll share the details with everyone who registered. So thank you. Nothing more from me to say. John, Karen, any final thoughts? Any final words at all?
Well, no, I'm just delighted that so many people joined, and actually, you know, thank you for the participation and the questions. That's great. Thank you very much, everybody. And yeah, and please do reach out to any of us. Happy to chat.
Great session. Thank you, Gavin, for helping us out with it.
Well, thank you. Great team effort. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Okay,
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.